Good afternoon, members of the Anteater community. I am so delighted that you are here joining us for our next installment of the What Matters to Me and Why program. It falls to me as the co-organizer of this program to give a brief overview and give you some directions before handing over to my colleague who will introduce our speaker today. This series, I've been informed, has been in existence now for about 6 years. And it is, I think, a remarkable space for us to learn about how our differences connect us, because each of the speakers, whether they are faculty or staff or students who come back in our alumni program, are able to reflect on the choices that they made, the opportunities that they seized, but also the hurdles that they've overcome. And I think that far too often we lead very busy lives, but this is one opportunity where we can actually listen intentionally to a colleague, a coworker, or a student, and learn about them and how we're connected. I have a few directions that I want to share. We really want to encourage your input about this program. In fact, all of the speakers are a direct product of nominations as well as self-nominations. And so please, I want to urge you to complete the program survey, and I want to encourage you to nominate individuals, including yourself. We have a full committee that evaluates and reviews nominations, and we really aspire to try to have a good representation, a great cross-section of this campus. Second, we are guests here in the School of the Humanities in this Gateway room, and so I want to urge you to discard your lunch as you exit. That'd be much appreciated. But now I'd like to turn it over to my colleague Jean, who will introduce our speaker.
First of all, happy Valentine's Day. What a great treat we have for this Valentine's Day. And thank you for joining us. It's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Stephen Tucker, who is currently the conductor of the Symphony Orchestra at UCI and a faculty member and teacher of conducting, orchestration, and analysis in the music department at the Claire Trevor School of the Arts. Before coming to UCI, he was the conductor of the Music Theater Workshop and assistant conductor for Opera UCLA, where he received his master's degree and his doctorate. Dr. Tucker also holds diplomas from the Vienna Conservatory and a couple of conductors' institutes. He has also conducted appearances in Slovakia, Hungary, Canada, and recently in Taiwan, which was at the National Taiwan Normal University. And UCI is as a part of the Sister School Agreement. And in 2005, Maestro Tucker made his Avery Fisher Hall debut at Lincoln Center. Since arriving at UCI in 2011, I had heard about Stephen right out of the gate, that I had to meet him. The thing that I remember most about how people talked about Stephen, besides his remarkable professional skills, was his deep commitment to students and to community. He is passionate about reaching out, reaching across, and reaching students, both here and in the community. And he's made a true commitment to his deep mentorship and creating opportunities for all students. One of the important contributions Dr. Tucker has made is a long-term, ongoing commitment to Santa Ana High School's Symphony Orchestra. In the first year of this commitment, he did master classes and a short concert with the high school students in the Symphony Orchestra, playing in concert with the UCI Symphony Orchestra at the Bill Medley Auditorium in Santa Ana. This collaboration continues, and UCI Music and Santa Ana High School are joined together in master classes and musicians coming both to the school and the students there coming to UCI. Up to now, Stephen and I had sort of a West Wing, hi, how are you relationship as we would pass one another on the arts campus as we scurried to meetings and appointments in totally different directions. Getting this opportunity to introduce Stephen gave me the time and purpose for really having the pleasure of sitting down with him in his office and hearing his story, learning about his journey, which is remarkable, and his passion for what he does. I am grateful to have the opportunity to get to know him, and know you will have the same today. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Stephen Tucker.
Is this thing on? The usual saying. It's really a pleasure to be here, if I can figure out how to turn on my own tablet. Of course, by now everybody knows I'm in music, right? Okay, so now that we've got that out of the way, I'm going to discuss probably not what you think you'd want to hear from me, but mainly what I'd like to say to you. And for some of us who are faculty members, this may ring as a challenge. For others, you may disagree, but as an old man said to me once, when he was describing music to me and how he felt about a certain piece of music, and he said, what do you think? And then he stopped in the middle and said, but it doesn't matter what you think. I like it. And I learned a lesson from that, right? It's not as important what I think about what you think, but rather how we can get from each other something that might benefit us. To start this off, I have to tell you that I didn't get here accidentally, because I don't believe in that. I believe that I couldn't have planned my life as well as my life turned out. But the most important thing to me has been the influence I've had from teachers. And I'm thinking of two particular people, but I'm going to focus on one today. And it's strange, I know that some people who know me well, who hear me talk every morning and every night at home, will probably think this is strange that I would focus on this person, because I sometimes curse this person, both to his face and behind his back. But I will tell you this. Most of the times, we don't recognize the value of teachers until we either are out of their presence or they're gone. Now, fortunately, this particular person is still with us, even though I live my life not having to see him every day, which is good. But I'll start by giving you a little story of how I ended up actually making my life, my headway in music. I was born in Jamaica. All right, now that's out the way. Here's the other good thing. I have an identical twin. As we grew up, and I'm going to just ignore this because I think I have too much on that. I'll never get a chance to have you ask questions if I stick to that, right? So I'm just going to talk to you because this is really from my heart. As we grew up in Jamaica, we were pretty fortunate. My sisters, there were 6 of us in the family, 6 siblings, 2 parents, right? And I observed my parents both working really hard. Now, if you know anything about Jamaica, you know it has a dichotomous economy or way of life. There are some people who live nicely, and there are some people who live in total poverty, right? Now, we were somewhere in the middle. We were fortunate that we weren't poor. But my parents showed me something that for years puzzled me. We recently went back to Jamaica, 4 of us, my brother, his wife, Dr. Turner, and I went back to Jamaica. And both ladies wanted to see where we grew up. They'd been to Jamaica before, but they hadn't seen exactly the house we grew up in. My brother and I kept saying to them, we went back once, and it's really small. We could not believe that 8 of us lived in that house. But we did, and we were happy. My parents made sure that we got what they thought we needed out of life. Now, the thing that puzzled me all my life was, if we walked less than 5 minutes from our house, we were at a school. But we didn't go to school there. It took us more than an hour to get to school. And we all went to that same school, far away from home. It took me years to figure out why that was. My eldest sister, Barbara, told me that it's because my father knew the teachers. And he determined that those were the people who were going to raise us. Those were the people who were going to teach us. Nobody else was going to teach us. So all 6 of us went through that school now we grew up in the British system. So what I call a restrictive educational system. It forces you to grow up really quickly. So by the age of 10, you sit an exam to determine if you go to high school. You go to high school at 10, possibly 11, and your life could be over by 15. And there are a lot of British kids who are still living that life. Jamaica has modified that somewhat. So you sit this exam, and it determines if you get to go to one of the select high schools. I'm skipping around because I want you to see my father's wisdom why we ended up there. We ended up getting to high school. So that means we passed the exams. But out of that, I remember seeing other kids around me. And this is another thing. My father was a pretty clever dog. You know, he figured out things that we were living in a community where we probably thought everybody had it like we had it, or better. And so he knew going to that school would not only put us in the care of those teachers, but also show us that other kids didn't have what we had. I went to school and saw kids come to school without shoes. And I mean regularly. They didn't have shoes, but they wanted to learn. And I remember some of those kids making it to high school, and I was so puzzled. How do they do it? Because to get to high school, you have to be able to afford uniforms. But here's the trick that made it work for them. If you passed the exam with a high enough grade, you got a scholarship. The scholarship could be as high as giving you not only books, but clothes. So a lot of those students ended up showing their worth and getting a chance to go to high school and getting clothing to go to high school. Now let's forget that. That's the good part of my life. My brother and I started out, according to my sisters, my older sisters, 2 of them are older, they said we were devils, but wonderful devils. They said ever since they could remember, we were always babbling and humming and singing something. It was always in harmony. So by the time we were 10 years old, we were playing for church. Now, here's the funny part. I just remembered. We hadn't had music lessons yet. But we had learned to play. My sisters had been getting music lessons, so there was a piano in the house. But we took to the piano, and my brother just told us this story that my younger brother, my twin, this is, whenever I say my brother, you know, people around me kind of go, well, wait, you have 2 brothers. I said, oh, shut up. I only talk about one brother, right? He's my twin, so don't confuse the issue, right? My younger brother called my twin, and they were talking. And so when my brother was out here last week, my twin, he told me a story. He said, Noel, my younger brother, said, you guys were never noticing this, but we watched everything you did. The older sisters and the younger, we just watched everything you did. Things you didn't notice that we watched because you were special. And our parents knew that. And we didn't care that they knew that you were different, because the way they looked at you, they knew that there was something going on inside you two that they couldn't fathom. So when we started playing without lessons, that was, of course, a shock to them, I'm sure. But the key thing that raised me to become a teacher was, and my sister, I need to remember to tell Barbara this. Barbara was a choir director. She's several years older than we are. And she was the choir director, and she discovered that she had, wow, built-in workers in the family, and they couldn't say no because she was older. So in running the choir rehearsals, she would just take us, split up the choir. One, you go teach those basses. Paul, go teach those. And you, Stephen, go teach the tenors. And the other day I went and looked up something. I said, wait a minute. What if I had been in the United States? Would that be legal? And I went and found something from the NCLC, but you know what that is? National Child Labor Committee. And you know why I found it? Because I've been thinking retroactively, I should bring a case against her, for that, for putting us to work. But here's the benefit to us. We actually learned at a very young age how to teach. And that has never left us. By the way, if you're wondering, my brother is a professor at the University of Kansas. And he's a conductor. So he's the head of choral activities at the University of Kansas. So all throughout our lives, we remember having discussions about, why does that person not get what I'm trying to give across? And we'd have discussions about all these different ways of teaching because it meant that much to us. And I discovered that that would stay with me for the rest of my life. I had friends, I still have friends, who are in the professional conducting world. I remember one trip in 2002. I was already here. I came in 2000. I went to the Ukraine with a bunch of conductors. We're competing against each other in a competition. But we're friends, And I don't sleep very much. And I found this other guy who, he just said, I'll walk with you. So in the middle of the night, we'd walk through the streets of Kharkov, Ukraine, just walking and just talking. And I remember him saying to me once, I would do anything to get a professional orchestra job. And I looked at him, and I think it was the first time I realized that my priorities were different than these other guys. And I said, Lawrence, would you give up your university job for that? And he said, oh yeah, like that. And I said, well, how does your wife feel about that? And he said, she will support whatever I want. It was the first time I actually realized that people didn't think like I thought. To him, the world with a professional orchestra was a lot more desirable than being in the teaching world. And that puzzled me, because I knew that, yes, I didn't mind every once in a while conducting the professional orchestras, but I certainly could not imagine not teaching. It just meant that much to me. So now I'm going to focus on a little bit, but enough about me. You know the joke. Let's talk about you. What do you think about me? Just kidding. But if you've never heard that, that's a precious one. I'm going to talk about a teacher. There's a story I hardly ever tell unless a student comes to my office and they're distraught. And they just feel like it's the end of the world. It's the end. They can't go on. And students come to my office, and I jokingly say, that box of tissues over there is so that you don't mess my rug. You don't cry on my rug. Right? Just get the box or go outside. Right? But this story, and I will not tell you today, because I reserve that for them. But out of this story came a situation that delayed my going to college. I would not go to college. I was living in New York City. We left Jamaica in '73 and went to New York, family. And after that experience, I decided, I'm skipping lots of things here, I decided not to go to college. So I started doing other things that meant a lot to me. I was rebuilding BMW engines, racing cars. My brother had just gotten his pilot's license. He left music completely. He became a commercial pilot, even training military pilots to be civilian pilots. He was far away from music. I was still on the edge of music in New York. I was doing all sorts of things, working in churches and so on. Till I decided one day, that's enough. I don't want to do any of that. But one night, I got a phone call from my old teacher from Jamaica. I skipped the move that we went back to Jamaica to study with him, because that's not as important. I'm looking at the clock. And I do want you to have your question time, because I will not be giving your speech today, okay? And so he called me one night and he said, there's a job in Boston. They're looking for somebody with your skills. I say, yeah, what's that? I have lots of skills. I'm a secret hitman also. So I didn't know what he wanted out of me. And he said, well, they need somebody who can conduct choirs, who can play, who can write arrangements, orchestrate, and hire an orchestra every once in a while and do the church, special church services. So, okay. And he said, well, I recommended you. And I said, no, I don't work with churches. Seriously. I said, I don't work with churches. He said, oh, okay. He hung up. Didn't say anything else. I didn't hear from him for about 2 weeks. And then a letter came in the mail. It was from the church, from their board. And it outlined everything they would give me. So I'm going to tell you what they're giving me. You get paid to play for church. You get a job teaching in our school, K through 8, teaching music. We will pay part of your tuition to any school you choose to go to. I said, yeah, right. Put it down. My brother at the time was in Texas. I called and woke him up one night and I said, listen to this crap. I read him the letter and I could tell he was half asleep and he went, well, you'd be a fool not to at least go and see if they're telling the truth. So I said, well, that sounds reasonable. They can't tie me there when I go. Slavery is abolished, So I went up the very next weekend. When I got there, the whole church, it was a big church, was a buzz. How they knew I was coming, I had no idea. I mean, they went through, I ended up playing for the service along with my old teacher, because little did I know, he was leaving the job to take a university job, right? And so we both played. He played the organ, I played the piano. Then in the afternoon, I went upstairs and conducted a rehearsal with a choir. I mean, suffice to say, at the end of that day, I'd taken the job. I was going to be living in Boston. So he says now, he comes to me with the other option. But I know you want to go to Boston University, but why don't you come to the school where I'm teaching and spend a year there and just do a year of work there in piano and organ, and then you can transfer. And I'm trying to get through this quickly. Within a year of being there, I'm studying for exams, end of semester exam. I'm in my car. There's a knock on the window. I look, it's him again. And he goes, what? He said, the new conductor wants to meet you. Meet me? The man is coming from Japan. What does he know about me? He said, just come. I went in. Apparently he walked in to the first faculty meeting and said, why don't you have any conducting majors? And they said, well, we have a student who conducts in Boston all the time. He's doing big concerts. And he's not studying, but he's conducting in Boston, right? I want to meet him. So that's why I was yanked in. Went in, met him, shook his hand, and my chair, the chair of the department, in her great wisdom, blabbermouth, says to him, oh, he's doing his jury, piano jury tonight. You know what a jury is? It's an exam where you play for the whole faculty. You sit there and play basically a short recital for them. They judge you, and it determines your grade. And I go, thank you. That's what I need, somebody else to judge me, right? And this is where I learned how smart that man was. He did not come in, did not come to the jury. I played, and the rest of the faculty quizzed me and questioned me and all sorts of things, more time than normal after I was through playing. I got up to walk out, and he had been standing in the alcove against the wall, listening. He just stepped out and shook my hand and said, "Come." We went into the music library, and he said, "Do you know any Beethoven symphonies?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, conduct some of the first symphony for me." So I picked up my arm, and he said, "Don't you use a baton?" I said, "Sure." I went to my briefcase, and he went, "I'm not studying conducting, but I have a baton." I started conducting, and he said, "I teach you." And that's how I studied conducting in college. Right. So it started with Dr. Kessner Robertson moving me to Boston. And by the way, he was the first person who told me when I would have just laughed at him. He said, "Do you know you can be a conductor if you want to?" I just finished basic conducting at the Jamaica School of Music. And he just said, "I know you can be a conductor if you want." And I kind of like, yeah, right, because the only orchestra I'd ever heard was what was called the Jamaica Philharmonic. You know what we called it? The Jamaica Foul Harmonic. That's what we called it as kids. So that's how bad it was. That as kids, we knew how bad it was, right? And so that was my model of what an orchestra sounded like. So, of course, I laughed at him, be a conductor, yeah, right. Well, after that experience at that school, I was on my road to being a conductor. From there, I went to the Vienna Conservatory and did that. But the important thing here is my impression of a teacher, what a teacher is, what a mentor is. As much as I knock heads with Dr. Robertson, by the way, there are two Robertsons in my life. I won't talk about the second one, the one at UCLA, although he was really significant. But the one I'm talking about is the one who had me in Jamaica and had me in Massachusetts. And I saw that man do things that I just thought he was either crazy or stupid. Because he would take on things that I myself didn't even know I needed. For example, getting me out of New York City to go to Boston, I don't know where I would have been, if I hadn't gone to Boston. I know that I probably wouldn't have made it past where I needed to be to even go to college. Yes, I probably would have gone to college for something else, but who knows? It might have taken me decades more before I realized my mistake. But he saw that. There was another instance that I will have to tell you about because there are three areas I think we need to focus on as teachers. A lot of times students don't know what they need, and I know that now that I didn't know what I needed. When my brother and I decided to leave New York and go back to Jamaica, it was a very painful decision for my mother because my mother always said, "Why would you go back to a place like that with all the opportunities you have here?" But we had been told before, and I truly believed it, that we needed more personalized attention in developing our skills musically. Now, we're in a place, New York, and we're seeing places offering us master's degrees from zero in 5 years. And we weren't stupid. We were smart enough to go, huh? That's kind of strange. What am I going to learn? I know where I am right now. I can't be ready for that. And here he's saying to us, he had just finished his doctorate at Boston University and had gone back to Jamaica because he owed the Jamaican government his life. They had supported him through all his studies. And so he went back to teach. And he had said to us when he met us first and heard us play, and he said, "You need individualized attention. You're not going to get it in the United States. You're not ready for that." My mother couldn't understand that. So we defied her. We saved up our money and went back to Jamaica. That morning, I'll remember for the rest of my life because we all sat in the living room and just cried. Because when she cried, we cried, right? And But we went. We were determined. We went. We went back to Jamaica not even thinking about how we're going to survive, how we're going to eat, how we're going to pay tuition, where are we going to stay. In steps Dr. Robertson. The moment he found out that we were back on the island, and he said, "Where are you staying?" I said, "We don't know." He said, "What?" And he jumped into action and contacted some people who knew of us, and we had a place to stay. We had tuitions, we had scholarships immediately. Right? So he created the environment for us to be able to study there. Now, when I think about that, I think about some of the students I've encountered who, UCI is doing a really good job, the UCs, I would say. We tell students that if your parents earn less than that amount percentage, you get free tuition. Right? That's great. I've encountered students who can't even take advantage of that because we don't even stop to think that they have more financial challenges than that. They can't. Takes us to what I call nutritional challenges. Some of them can't feed themselves. Fortunately, UCI, at least as one place, has now decided that we have a problem. We need to create some pantries where we can at least do stopgap feeding and then counsel them on how to deal with their nutritional needs. That's great. There are other things that most of you have not even considered, and I want to talk about that for about 5 minutes. What I call social unpreparedness. And it's not just for them, it's for us. How many times have you told a student, well, let me start here. When I went to UCLA to start my master's and my doctorate, we went into orientation, and I'll never forget these words by the graduate advisor. She said, "Don't expect UCLA to tell you anything. You need to find it out for yourself." What she was talking about was financial aid. If you need money, don't think we're just going to come to you and say, "Oh, by the way, there's money here." You need to figure it out, right? But I thought about this for a long time. And then it rang true when I came here and I realized that we were accepting all these Latino students, right? First generation students, right? And we didn't understand their lives, their socialization, right? Or African American kids. Do you know that most kids from societies like that, or communities like that, would opt for failure rather than ask you for something and hear you say no? They're accustomed to hearing no all their lives. Even if it doesn't come vocally, they're turned down all their lives. So they're socialized to think, I don't have a chance. I'm not going to get it. So, now to my question. How many times have you told a student, "Oh, just go over to so-and-so and fill out those forms, and they will process it and try to find you some help." And you find out 2 weeks later, the student didn't go. And you go, what is wrong with them? What's wrong with this student? The student doesn't care. We've never stopped to think that the fear of asking for them is greater than the fear of not having. They know what not having feels like. They don't want to take the chance of being told no again. So when I say we need to be aware of their socialization and what I call their social unpreparedness to take advantage of the university and what we have to offer them, I am telling myself when I say that, wow, teaching is a greater burden than I thought. Because we all think we're smart. We've been taught all this information. We have all of this stuff to give them. And they sit there and look at you like, Sometimes they look like they're sleeping, and they probably are, right? And you think, don't you realize you're going to get an F? Which reminds me of a story my sister-in-law told me about my niece. She was struggling with an assignment, and this has a twofold purpose. Struggling with an overnight assignment, was due the next day, and she just couldn't go to sleep. And my sister-in-law, Vicky, said, well, honey, why don't you just ask your dad? You know, he can help you with it. She said, no! He's going to try to explain everything about it to me. I just want the answer. I don't want to learn everything about it. Right? Which kind of tells you our attitude towards teaching. But look at her. She was raised in a family where she understood that things were available to her, yet she was ready to say, no, I'm not going to ask. That's a puzzle to her mother. That why wouldn't you let your father help you with the homework? No, she'd rather not have it than have the whole lesson the whole night. Right? Now think about all these kids who have not been raised in her environment, right? And just think about what they have to make choices about. I told this to one faculty friend of mine, and the person said, so, you're expecting us to do more? Don't you see how much we're overworked? We're underpaid, hello, all right? You know, and we're disrespected by the system and the students and everything, and you want me to now go and figure out what's going on in their minds? And I said, yeah. See, I'm in the enviable position of being a conductor. Right? And as I said in a meeting once, I get paid to listen. I mean, one of my peers thought that was a fascinating statement. But truly, that's what I get paid to do. Not to move my arms, but to listen, right? And figure out what's not right and fix it. So it comes a little more easily to me to not only listen to some of the things they say, but some of the things they don't say. And all I'm suggesting is that if we really want to be true mentors, true teachers, not just disseminators of information, but really helping people, we have to start listening to the sounds and to the actions, right? We have to listen to it. Now, Dr. Turner told me a story. I told you I was going to embarrass you. He told me a story once about a student who was supposed to have an office hour with her. And the student came in, and she noticed the student was just fidgety, antsy, you know, just looking around. And then her eyes just gravitated to the bowl of candy on her desk. You haven't had the benefit of seeing her office. The bowl of emergency candy over there. And the student is just staring at it. And she looks up and she says, would you like one? Right? Well, the reach told her something. Right? That was not a normal, oh, sure, I'll take one. That was, she said, have you eaten? Huh? Well, how are you going to have, and she's thinking, how am I going to have office hours with this person? Right? When all she's thinking about is her hunger. Right? So fortunately, she always keeps these emergency bars for me. Right? Not for the student, okay? And I still want my candy back, my bar back from that student. And she went into her desk and got the bar and gave it to her. And then they were able to have, you know, office discussion. Some of these kids are not prepared to hear what you're saying. We have to take the initiative to figure out what's going on. Sometimes, I had a student, let me put it this way, disclaimer, I've kicked at least 5 people out of the orchestra. I've never kicked a person out of the orchestra for lack of talent. As a matter of fact, I think I would be hard-pressed to find a student I truly kicked out because they didn't produce enough. You know what I kick people out for? Disrespecting the community. Not caring. How do they show that they don't care? The one rule in the orchestra is you must be there. And we don't even have to say it anymore. If you're not there, that's the quickest way to be put out, right? You start missing rehearsals. Whenever you see somebody who comes to a rehearsal and no matter how good they are at what they do, they think it's more important for them to be comfortable, I get rid of that person because that destroys the community. And I've had to put out 2 people I can remember now because they did things so egregious, disrespecting the community, that they had to go. They just had to go. One, well, let's not get into that. My point is, if you look at your students and you find that there are students there who truly want to be helped, but they don't know how they want to be helped, they don't even know sometimes they need to be helped. They're different than the student who really doesn't want to be there. And you have to recognize that. It's the burden that's on you. I'm sorry. Did you get what I find to be important? All right, good. Any questions? Okay, I know there were people who thought I was going to say something else. Some people say, well, I want to hear about your career. Yeah, right. No, you don't. I hope you don't have any questions because my normal saying is that if there were no questions, it means I was so clear. I was wonderful, right?
Thank you very much. It was very interesting to listen to your story and very much eye-opener sometimes. So I have a question. You mentioned that you couldn't find in the United States a personalized teacher, who would... Attention, personalized program for you. So did it become better right now? Do you think that the instruction in the
Well, let me say something that I think that might be disappointing to a lot of people. The United States educational system is not designed for that. It's designed to get you in and out. And if you're honest, you'll say that. That's what we do. We get you in and we get you out, okay? You don't have, unless you go somewhere where there's a small school and there are people who subscribe to that notion that it is my job to give you that detailed, step-by-step attention. There are schools like that, but they're not at the college level that I know of. I hope I answered that.
Yeah, and do you think it should be improved? Do you see the...
I don't think it can be.
Okay.
I might sound discouraging, but I think it's so based on money and bodies going through that you would have to go and find a school that does the preparatory work before you could go into that. Even here, in our music department, I'm sure the students will bear me out, that the teachers are very, very invested in the music department, but they can only do so much, right? The great complaint they have is that we hire all these lecturers to teach these specialized subjects like cello, violin, all that kind of stuff. They don't get paid very much. They have to get to the students and get it done, right? And honestly, we can't expect that from them. So that's where I was coming from. Yes?
You did a presentation for us one time with the Chancellor's Club, and you told us that a lot of your students aren't even music majors.
Correct.
And is that still the case? They come with their instruments and they have a passion and they want to play.
Yeah, this is my advertisement right now, right? More than 50% now, wouldn't you say? Yes? Yeah, about 50. About 50% of the orchestra is non-music major. I had a faculty member who liked to brag that, we have a great school, university, students are going to come. Well, it's not that easy. There are students who want to play and they're very good at playing. But if I'm an engineering student and there's a conflict between my engineering class and orchestra rehearsal, which one do you think I will have to choose? Engineering. Therefore, the orchestra is at the whim of the non-music major. So it still needs to be based in majors more than non-major. We're fortunate that I would say 98% of the students who stick to it are the non-majors. They don't have to do it, but they want to do it. I've had MD, PhD students try to do it, and I've said to them at the audition, you can't do this. And they say, but I've played for 18 years, I have to play. I say, you can't do this. Well, let me try. And they last less than a month. Can't do it. It's just the burden of doing an MD, PhD? Oh, please. I mean, not even an MD student who came to us the other day. He never made it to even one rehearsal. Even though I told him, don't, you can't do this. I'd love to have you. Before the first rehearsal, he realized his load and had to back up. So there are people who really want to do it. Sorry, talking too much. Yeah.
Have you ever felt
Never.
Have you ever felt very discouraged, and what brought you through?
Thank you. This is very personal. When I came to UCI, I didn't want to be here. UCLA made me come here. I blame them and I thank them. Right? I came in 2000, didn't want to be here, and I'm just going to cut to the chase. What made me make through it? Dr. Turner. She came in 2005, and she thought I was crazy not to want to be here. But the day she said, it's okay. If you want to leave, we can still make it work. Wherever you go, we'll make it work. But I like UCI. And I thought, she's a weirdo. Who would say something like that? And then she went to my office with one of her daughters and rearranged my office and said, I want this to be the kind of place you want to come to. That's what made it. I won't get into the details of why I didn't want to be here. Yeah.
You mentioned that you first went to work for a church. What was that church, and did faith play any part in your what matters to you and why?
I was raised a Seventh-day Adventist. So it's a very musical environment. I mean, there's music everywhere around. It's like saying I was raised Mormon. There's music. It's just what we do, right? You know, I have Mormon conductor friends, and we kind of laugh. We say we have the same culture. It's just music. It's a big thing. So growing up in that, yes, that made a difference in my life. As far as the church that I worked for in Boston, I only have good feelings about them in the long run, but I wouldn't say it. By the time I got there, the bug of teaching was already there, so I wouldn't say they influenced that as much. But the fact that I went there changed my life, because I ended up going to school because of that. Did that help?
Very much.
Good, good. Man, I'm good. Cassandra, you told me that you were coming. Why? You have some question? Well, you've been with me 4 years now, so you have no questions left, right? John? Sure. Ask her to stand. Okay, you look like you're happy. Good.